Let's now examine the most important evidence against the lunar landings, or the reasons why many people don't believe that we went to the moon. The first issue, and definitely one of the most important, is the problem of radiation, represented by the Van Allen belts. Earth is surrounded by two highly radioactive areas called the Van Allen belts. They were named after their discoverer, astrophysicist James Van Allen. These belts are located between a minimum of 1,000 miles and a maximum of 25,000 miles from the surface of the Earth. Up to this day, every single mission with men on board, from the American Gemini to the Russian Soyuz, from the Space Shuttle to the International Space Station, has kept well below this dangerous area of radiation, rotating in what is called low Earth orbit. The only men in history to have allegedly ever crossed the Van Allen belts are the astronauts from the Apollo missions. This crossing, however, poses some problems that apparently have not been resolved to this day. Let's take a closer look at the history of the Van Allen belts. In January 1958, the United States launched their first satellite, Explorer 1. This satellite carried some special instruments designed by scientist James Van Allen, whose purpose was to measure radioactivity in space. The satellite had been launched along an eccentric orbit, ranging from a minimum height of 200 miles to a maximum of 1,600 miles. Thanks to this eccentricity, Van Allen made a double surprising discovery. Not only did radioactivity increase as we moved away from Earth, but beyond a certain point, the Geiger counter suddenly dropped to zero before resuming normal operation. This is how James Van Allen describes that experience.
And I began to understand that what was going on here, because we had segments of this orbit when it came down to low altitude, which looked quite normal. Then we had a very rapid change, very rapid increase in cutting rate, and then it dropped back to nothing. And then a few minutes later, it came up from nothing to a very high rate and then dropped back to a normal value. And this pattern was repetitive. It seemed to be a systematic pattern.
The reason for the sudden drop to zero was due to the fact that the radiation became so intense beyond a certain altitude that the Geiger counter simply went off scale.
And now we'll jump above 600 miles and we'll see what happens when we get closer to the source of radiation.
Uh-oh, there it goes back down to zero again.
Yes?
The transition said yes. It went into something that was strong and then went to zero. Therefore, obviously, had encountered intense radiation.
It was the discovery of the so-called Van Allen radiation belts, two donut-shaped belts located in the magnetosphere, which protect life on our planet by trapping the most dangerous radiation coming from outer space. In 1959, Van Allen wrote, "Our planet is ringed by a region, to be exact, two regions, of high-energy radiation extending many thousands of miles into space. The discovery is, of course, troubling to astronauts. Somehow, the human body will have to be shielded from this radiation, even on a rapid transit through the region."